Welcome to the Deconstructing Data podcast and live stream. I'm Jessie Lezak, fractional CMO at BDEX, along with David Finkelstein, BDEX's founder and CEO. What's going on, David?
Hey, Jessie. All good. I see you're reporting from the cabin today.
Yes, on the Mississippi.
That's awesome.
Hot day.
Hot summer in Mississippi.
Absolutely. Well, I'm in Illinois, but on the Mississippi River.
On the Mississippi. Very cool. So I'm excited about today's podcast, but I'll put out a little teaser with our new product development going on. Our OmniPixel is getting an upgrade, and I believe, as far as I could tell, we are going to be the first hybrid solution in the Pixel world as far as anonymous visitor tracking across both cookies and cookieless solutions all in one. So it's pretty neat. It's exciting. Looking forward to launching this hopefully another week or so.
I love it. So exciting. Can't wait. Especially, it's like, cookies are going away, but they are still useful in some ways. So I'm so glad that, we found a way to do this. But I digress for now. Today on Deconstructing Data, we're thrilled to welcome Taylor Gabor, a user privacy advocate and mobile marketing growth leader. Let me bring her in here. Welcome, Taylor.
Hello. So happy to be here and thrilled to talk about all things data today.
Awesome. Yeah, we're glad you could join us today, and we'd love for you to kick it off. And for those of our listeners who aren't familiar with you, why don't you give us a little bit of background about you and sort of your career path and what you're doing today? Why don't you kick it off?
Yes. So I've been in marketing for about 14 years. I really started as a creative strategist. I was a musician in my college days and a theater kid. So I thought, hey, advertising lets me use all of that side of my brain, be especially visual. And I started in a marketing company where I was putting together photo shoots and doing casting and working with photographers and graphic designers, but quickly realized it pays a lot better on the data-centric side of things and started to brush up my old Excel skills. And I was at an affiliate agency. I'm from San Diego, which is somewhat famous for having lots of affiliate marketing companies. And so I was exposed to some very intensely successful and aggressive affiliate marketing tactics. And that's where I learned to manipulate large sets of advertising data in order to basically monetize consumer traffic. From there on, I moved more into brand facing. I worked at an ad agency in the Bay Area called Machine Zone. That got me into mobile marketing. And since then, I've been very much a leader in the mobile marketing space. So if you ever want to talk about IDFAs or SK Ad Network, I'm really the person for you. Right now, I'm based in New York. Interim leading marketing at Castor Labs, which is launching their first social game for friends this summer. I've been helping them gear up for that launch. We're literally like 2 weeks away from it going live in the App Store, so I'm very excited for that. But I'm also soon taking on a big role at Feature, which is a marketing agency based out of Berlin. I'm leaving New York and spreading my wings to learn some German, kind of start my next chapter in mobile marketing.
That's awesome. It's a great journey. I love hearing people's journeys. And so let's talk about mobile marketing. That's our first topic, right? So let's dig a little deeper about your experience here. Love to have you share some of this with our listeners.
Yeah. So when I got into mobile marketing, it was different enough from regular acquisition, which I had been doing for a few years, but there was this added layer of complexity because Apple, in all of their wisdom of creating the App Store, also created something called the IDFA, an identifier for advertisers. And this was basically to replace the system of cookies and UTM parameters that we had become like kind of addicted to on web. And this is before. Anyways, IDFA has like a good run of like 10 years Apple announces, hey, they're getting rid of it, and Google's going to copy that move very soon. So the last couple of years, mobile marketers have probably had the hardest job of most marketers. Everyone who's worried about cookie deprecation, just ask a mobile marketer what it's been like for the last 3 years, because we've been living that on the mobile side. So I very much heavily specialize in user acquisition. That's the track I came up on. But in mobile, because the product is so focused, you be very quickly become kind of an all-around growth person as well. So my knowledge of kind of user acquisition data started to carry out to CRM and retention and monetization pricing and paywalls and all of these other lovely tools that make mobile marketing so special. So mobile marketers are some of the most fast-moving, data-driven folks that I know, because you have to be able to comfortably handle so many different types of data sets. Some of them are anonymized at this point because of privacy regulations, and some of them are still at that user level. So being able to toggle back and forth between product data that is user level and then advertising data, which is kind of 50-50 between obscured for the user's privacy sake and also user level, that's a hard job. I think being able to explain that data to the C level is now the mobile marketer's like number one responsibility. How are you measuring things? Why that way? What happened to cost per install, cost per acquisition that we used to have? But we're doing it, and mobile has bounced back in a big way since the first year of setbacks and growth.
Yeah, so let's talk about some of those challenges, right? I mean, that's it's huge. The targeting sort of capability, the methodology for targeting is completely changed. Tell us a little more about that.
Yeah. So you used to very much be able to say, I would like to upload this list of users and immediately create a lookalike based off of that. Now that is much less likely to be a path of how mobile marketers do user acquisition. Now it's much more black box algorithm. So you'll connect a lot of your product data to the ad network itself. I work a lot in social ads, so TikTok or Meta, and then let and trust TikTok or Meta to identify and profile your highest value users. Mobile marketers basically have lost a lot of control in being able to drill down and maybe identify our whales, our high LTV niches and cohorts, and do a lot more of kind of trusting the platforms to make those decisions for us. And in doing so, you end up having to send more data to that ad network. So while it used to be okay to be like, hey, I'm going to upload a list, these are the people I would like to target. Instead of doing that, you are having to pass some sort of proxy for value with a lot of your events into those systems. So some people send actual sales revenue data and things like that. Some people make up like a secret code for what high value revenue could be because they don't want to share their revenue numbers with Facebook, which I totally understand.
Hmm.
But there's also a huge emphasis on that first 24, 48 hours of data. If you have a longer engagement cycle or sales cycle, you are really left in the dark with a lot of these privacy changes.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking also, is that the longer sales cycle becomes a problem. Obviously, we've been talking a lot about that on the show with respect to cookies. Longer sales cycle makes it a lot more difficult. But you're saying that's the same issue when you're dealing in mobile as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you see people responding to this in a very collaborative way across product and marketing teams. So people are starting to productize an experience that they could use as a proxy for that longer sales cycle. So that might be some sort of lead gen form in a super traditional sense. Okay, they filled out this form. We're going to optimize towards that and not the sale. Or it could be some other sort of like more shallow event that someone's more likely to do in the beginning of the sales cycle as opposed to closer to the actual transaction or whatever your acquisition aha moment is. But that also takes a lot of data science power. So if you are a company that wants to scale using advertising, you better be ready to have people who can handle that kind of machine learning in-house. Basically, your head of marketing or your user acquisition leader has to be paired and coupled with a data scientist at this point, because otherwise you're going to be optimizing towards that wrong first event and you'll waste a lot of time acquiring the wrong people or building up the wrong profile of people that you want your ads to target.
And another question is about about performance. I know that when Apple first launched ATT, Ask Not to Track, and then Google followed suit, Do Not Track, there were a lot of small businesses that were really hurt. And a lot of them, I saw some just go away. I saw a lot of talk about, not being able to achieve the same performance on their ad campaigns. How are you seeing that has evolved since then?
Yeah. I mean, there was a certain amount of wisdom 10 years ago, 8 years ago, where if you wanted to launch a digital product, that it made sense to launch it on mobile because of this ease of measurement, because of the ecosystem in which you could acquire and transact. There was like a lot of things that made sense for a small app development studio to do. Now, to be honest, like a true small business is unlikely to be a big consumer of an ad product that Facebook or Google is selling. So yeah, they definitely get left behind because Google and Meta are and Apple are doing things that help their own bottom line, which is making the most off of that advertising, those impressions. I will say that there's still a lot of startups, mobile app startups that like have a harder time getting funding. So it's not necessarily that they're um, failing to acquire their users. It's just that a mobile app as a startup first step has become like a lot more risky to investors. So if you talk to any of the VC people, they have different standards now for what types of products that they will invest in. I think there's been a lot of shift of people in my marketing cohorts towards like B2B roles or hybrid B2B to C, places where you still have those budgets in order to play this game. And we're just seeing less diversity of new types of apps come out. And there's a huge shift in the big app development studios are the ones who are still releasing because they have such a critical mass of their own data that they don't have to worry about playing by Apple's or Google's privacy games, that they are in fact so large that they are their own ad network, and they can still afford to play by these rules. I would say that other big spenders in the advertising economy of consumer are still doing fine. Like travel companies are still able to grow, and you've seen a lot of them still put up positive numbers like after quarantine lifted and things like that. So those companies are doing fine. But yeah, your mom and pop like studio development team is not going to make it big with ads these days. And you might instead hear of a very organic viral moment like a Wordle, right? Which is not strictly a mobile app, but it is a game that is heavily played on mobile, and a lot of its copycats are essentially mobile apps.
Yeah, it's definitely gotten harder for the little guy, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I say all of this with like all of the love in my heart for the benefits that it does give to the individual for their own ownership of their data. My job got harder though. There's no denying that.
I mean, it's pretty clear you better have your data put together and a pretty good strategy. And it sounds like you're even suggesting each CMO, needs a data scientist as sort of right next to them. And it makes sense for decision making. But sort of transitioning us now into our second topic, data models. Could you talk to us about effective conventions and integrations?
Absolutely. This is something I gained appreciation for as I spent more time in individual roles or individual teams, because I've spent a lot of time at startups where in the beginning it's really tempting to not invest in that infrastructure. But if you are not setting yourself up for long-term data usability, the data that you had 2 or 3 years ago is going to be unusable and therefore really not helpful in informing your strategy a couple years later. So my sort of like cheating answer to this is to really be bring all of your stakeholders together as soon as possible. It's really hard to build a data model, and it's even harder to do it when you don't have all of those stakeholders in the room. And you need to understand that the person who's running lifecycle messaging has needs quite similar to the person who is doing advertising and like managing the data pipelines for UA. But you are going to end up with something very lopsided if you only have one person who is really leading the charge on getting those things built out. The good thing is that marketers have like very much long been heavy stakeholders of this kind of data, especially on the performance marketing side. So you should have no shortage of talent if you have somebody who is, 5, 8 years into this gig, and someone being able to advise you on what the right data model is for your business model. But it also is, again, which is, it's very, so last year the last 2 years I had been working for a subscription business model that was very much reliant on having subscription data piped to all of our platforms, which relied on that data refreshing like periodically. It's not just enough to have that first day's worth of sales. You need those weekly subscription numbers, those monthly cohorts, all of that. And being able to model that convention is very different than other places that I've worked that monetize in real time. Maybe a company that monetizes via ads and just needs to have the data that is modeled off of the structure of their product. Where are those ads showing? Who did it win against? Who did it beat? So I've seen quite a lot of it, and I would say the more you hire someone who has seen your exact business model or has seen quite a diverse number of business models and like monetization, you're going to be able to pipe something through that is going to last you more than like 6 months at a time. And your analysts or your data scientists will thank you because it means that their project timeline gets a lot shorter. There's nothing more frustrating than needing an analysis yesterday and knowing that it's going to take your best analyst like another 2 days to even get that place before they want to make any recommendation.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, the reality is that, the challenge there is getting each stakeholder involved to make sure that you're getting all of the right data that you need to build that model, or it won't be effective, right? And so that's not always easy. The bigger the company gets, the more difficult that is, and you have different stakeholders that are trying to own certain data within the company, but I guess it's sort of the CMO's job, right, to sort of be the roundup and say, okay, we need to round up data from these different, places, whether it be the customer data coming in from, from the product, so the product user data, the sales data, data from finance, whatever. So you have data coming from multiple different places, support, whatever it is. And so now you're needing all of those different data sets to come in order to build the model to reach the right people, right? And so now you're building a model where you're trying to target certain people, but you want to make sure you're reaching the right people and getting the right customers.
Yep. And it's only gotten more tricky to handle all of that data. So you need people who are going to be responsible with the level of data that you give them. I mentioned before we started that like I worked in a very kind of unsupervised affiliate environment. I was allowed to do whatever I wanted with any amount of data, and there was not a lot of regulation in our industry, and I was able to do a lot and create a lot of analyses based off of that. These days, like the companies that I have been in are much more careful. There's also a lot more scrutiny socially and legally about what data can be handled and by whom, which is a good thing for the consumer, But it's not something that you necessarily get a lot of education at, especially if you're in a fast-moving startup environment, as we all are, in terms of what you should be doing and what you should be touching. Um, and with the data management is like partially about that model, and then there's this extra layer of permissions and making sure the right people have the right access. Because I was supposed to have read-only access at one of my biggest companies to a particular database, and it turns out I had write access, and it would have taken just like one stray keystroke to bring down like a million dashboards because I was able to like relabel Colorado as Columbia, just, by accident. So it is such an important foundation for any company that really wants to go places or is finding themselves already successful and now with the responsibility of wrangling all of that and understanding why they've been successful. But a fun challenge nonetheless.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a crucial mistake for sure, and it's important to make sure that the right people have access to the right data, but also the right controls on that data, not just access to the data. To your point, you had access to the data, but you also had access to control the data in a way that was dangerous.
Yep.
Yeah. Yes, as marketers, sometimes it's like you don't want access to things. I've definitely told people like I only need certain access. I don't want any more because accidents do happen. I've seen it, Google spreadsheet with like hundreds of thousands of records and someone deleted it and then you get too far in it that it can't be reverted. It's that happened in 2008 on a political campaign, and so we were dealing with a lot of data then too. But you start to learn, and I'm thankful for that experience because like you said, I was at a larger organization. It was a presidential campaign. So I was taught a lot of rules, but then after that I would go to local campaigns and like, no one knows these rules. So I have to be the one educating them. So it's really an interesting landscape right now, but everyone should, definitely find someone on your team. And I'm so glad to hear both of you pushing for the CMO to have that leverage to, have a data scientist with them or, have that information, but also be a part of the conversation. Because now you're hearing a lot of major, even B2C brands taking the CMO role and turning it into like a chief brand officer, but then no longer allowing them in those stakeholder conversations. Where a lot of those stakeholders themselves should, probably be working on their brand anyway. So they should have the branding person there. I digress, but yeah, I couldn't agree more with both of you there. So
Yeah.
Anything else you both want to add on data models and effective conventions and integrations before we move on to our third topic?
I mean, we talked. Well, the topic implies conversation about integration. So I'm curious, Taylor, what your thoughts were when in suggesting this topic. I don't think we touched on it, so I'd love to kind of go deeper.
Yeah. These last couple of years, I've had a couple different environments where I was really lucky to be somewhere where I got to advise on setups from scratch. And granted, they're in an environment that are resource, but I really was able to take my years of working with, someone else's setup and inheriting that setup and then be able to finally apply like my dream scenario and adapt it for the companies and products that I was working on. And it very quickly became clear like, okay, like I totally understand why this goes wrong so quickly because you have to have kind of an obsessive attention span in order to see something through from beginning to end and have detail oriented folks who are involved and committed to like a high quality implementation so that every single handoff does not leave anything hanging. Communication lines have to be so open in order for that to happen. Um, And I really became a yes man for documentation in a way that I had kind of burnt out on. I had worked at a document heavy culture um, that had made me feel like stuck in the mud for a little bit and made me feel like, oh, nothing's getting done. We're just debating this, that, or the other, and had kept writing longer documents in order to get things done. But when it came to this, like from scratch, building out a data model that worked for life cycle, for email, for push, for advertising on every network, for web and the website and the web funnel and our different subscription vendors and all of this, um, having at least one person who is willing to get their arms around all of it like as quickly as possible and then be able to break it down and be that guidepost for everybody else who would have these like edge case questions like along the way. I really felt like an engineer in a way that I had never before in my roles. I felt like I was actually building something and deciding the shape and the feel and the use cases for it and what I was including in the scope and what I was consciously like sacrificing and saying not today, not tomorrow, not for a year. So I would say that like this is something that if you're coming to that crossroads of this project at your company, to really have some amount of patience to do it right, because the cost of dealing with an inherited system just like weighs so heavily on your marketing and analysts for years. Garbage in, garbage out, as they say. So I'm really proud of doing that work with teams and setting that up for folks in a sustainable way. Um, but it does take just like a gargantuan amount of research and, have patience for whoever that is on your team to get it right the first time, hopefully.
Yes, hopefully.
Yep. It's always an ongoing challenge.
Always.
Truly.
Yeah. So, well, thank you for wrapping up that topic. I'll transition us now into our third topic, which is data latency effects on CRM campaigns. So, what would you have to share with the audience about this topic?
Yes. So, this I propose this topic because one of my more recent favorite marketing technology pieces are tools related to retention, lifecycle, CRM on the consumer side. Um, and on web and other digital products, there's been like a really fast evolution of a lot of tools that do a lot of different things. But on mobile, because of the kind of oversight that Apple and Google have on what is allowed to be rendered in an app, this space has been evolving kind of slowly. And only in the last like 18 months have there really been leaps and bounds forward of things that you can actually do in mobile that were just not possible before or not allowed before, or the tech wasn't there without huge overhauls to your product. But basically, now, if you have a tool like Braze for CRM, um, or any of its very lovely competitors like CleverTap, you can do a lot more in terms of customization, segmentation, personalization, and the marketers themselves can do this in a way that was deemed, let's say, like the purview of product people only, which really, I would say, hindered marketers from being able to achieve kind of their best work. Um, and because there's been less third-party data sets to worry about, meaning like the marketing data that comes from before someone is an account holder of your product, now there's been this focus on marketers to understand the product side data and being able to leverage that in the messages that are sent in push notifications, SMS, email, etc. And the tools that help you craft and customize these messages have really zoomed to the stars in their ability to leverage that product data for that customization. You're essentially building like custom microsites with every message that you get. But if you are not a partner with real-time data, if you have not paid for like fast data processing and you're on that lowest rung tier of that plan, you're going to end up with yesterday's data, 2 hours ago's data. And in a mobile product, people expect that latency to be near zero. They expect live updates. They're on the go with their phones. And so you need to make sure that your data setup and your integration tools is just absolutely like airtight as fast as can be, because the minute that you are out of date, you've now degraded your messaging. In the eyes of that consumer, they're expecting to have the most messaging possible because of the nature of how they use their devices and where they use their devices. So I think this is something that I got advised on as I was heading into like selecting my first ever marketing data pipeline for CRM, which was be very careful about what data you need to be real time and what data you can like suffer having yesterday's data for, because you'll never get everything real time. That's just not possible, and your data team and your engineering team will think you're crazy for asking for the moon. But if you can really prioritize the most valuable things to have in real time, there are tools now that are absolutely capable of rendering that for you as a marketer without having to make it engineering's problem to build that screen. You can build that screen or that message as a marketer with these tools if you've really invested in the speed of your data upfront.
So if you're advising a company that is building their app or whatever, they're trying to figure out, you're talking to the CMO about what data they may need. What are you advising them on? What would you say are like the top pieces of data that one should be collecting in their app in a real-time environment, to leverage those communication capabilities most effectively?
I would say start by mirroring the dreams of your product roadmap and figure out how marketing will be able to take that to the next level. So, product might be saying, hey, we would love to have a screen that shows them this message upon this interaction. It's just not on our roadmap to make that much better right now. So I've been working for a dating app, right? And in dating apps, real time information that is super valuable are like who's online that you've been messaging with, are people messaging you, and who's like still waiting for a response versus, hey, you've messaged them back, it's fine. Or did someone literally just like you, right? And pieces of data that probably exist somewhere in that like product data landscape that make the product functionally run. But when you unlock that for the marketing team, and the marketing team can now be like, hey, 45 people just liked you, 46 people, 47, 48 people just swiped right on you. And it's as, true to form as possible. Those pieces of data are things that in the past you might have like faked as a marketer, a fake timer, a fake countdown, all of these things. But the more your marketing messaging can mark that, marry that real-time feeling of using the product, the more likely you're going to have the most valuable messages. And then when you are giving people value in your marketing messages, they will open them more. They will trust them with useless little nudges and instead have actual useful data in every message that you're sending to them.
That makes sense. I mean, it comes down to communications, like when you think about what you're saying, it's like those are all human interactions, right? So it's like those human interactions are the ones that are the most important to relay to the consumer instantly.
Absolutely. And the more interactive your product is, the more people have those touch points, the more you'll get to play with what that data is and what it needs to be. If maybe you're an e-reader app and someone's just reading books and they don't want to be interrupted, maybe there's less data for you to play around with because you're not actually supposed to be bothering them while they finish the chapter.
Yes, that's a good rule as a marketer to know like when and when not to interrupt, like when it's beneficial to help your brand and when it's not.
Yeah, honestly, that's so much of it, right? If you
Mhm.
have real-time data about what your user is looking at, you're so much more likely to be able to time your message better. Even if the message is not you just having that real-time timing of are they in the right place? That's the kind of data that we don't often hand to marketers because they're like, well, you don't need to know every button that they're looking at or every screen that they're looking at. It's very expensive to start to do that. But if you're identifying moments and screens and user experiences that you do and do not want to interrupt, that's also really valuable data to pipe into.
It makes me think of um, the website, the OmniPixel, David. It's just like, knowing when to follow up with people and having that data is so powerful, and forming the right message and the
Mhm.
right process. But yeah, no, this is sort of a conversation I feel like in marketing we always come down to, it's like, okay, we have this data, but how creepy would it be if we, acted on all of
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. You gotta
There's
be
always that fine line.
yes, definitely. Hence a lot of the data privacy stuff. So, but anything else on data latency effects on CRM campaigns that you might want to touch on?
I feel like I'm very happy. I hope someone listening to this asks someone on their team, like, hey, what if our data is real time? If a couple of you turn to your colleague today and do that, like I've done my job for data latency.
I love
Perfect.
that. I guess, it kind of makes me want to turn to you, David, and say, hey, David, what data do we have that's real time? We need to figure this out.
Uh-oh.
I mean, well, we have too much data probably that's real time. And that's where you got to sort and prioritize, sort of like you were saying, right? Like, what is that number one piece of data to really act upon? I think it's healthy for all brands to, even if you feel like you already have it, go back and rethink about it. Is it working? Look at the data on the data, and reconsider your strategy. But um,
Yep.
this has been a really great conversation, and we're almost already to the top of the hour already on all of these topics. But anything else that either of you want to add before we get into tech stack?
Now let's jump in.
All right. So tech
Mhm.
stack is something we ask all of our guests, Taylor, and we're curious, like, what are some of the tools in your tech stack that help you and your team succeed?
Yes. I love being asked this because I ask other people and I appreciate why they don't answer this question, but sometimes everyone is too diplomatic and won't answer. So, in mobile marketing, there is a suite of analytics tools that are categorized as MMPs, mobile measurement providers. And for a long time, my favorite, head and shoulders above the others, has been Coachava. It is definitely the Corvette of MMPs, and there are a lot of like really solid competitors out there that offer a lot, and you should explore the ones that will suit you. But my favorite thing about Coachava, very connected to this, is that they have kind of an unprecedented amount of data that they let you access in real time. And building a truly like data driven team, and your team is full of folks who know how to run their own SQL queries and handle their own data on an ad hoc basis, Coachava is the one. There are others that will eventually give you that level of data, but Coachava is like, no, table stakes. You need clarity. So Coachava for sure. And then the other one that I think really changed the game for me um, is kitchen.io, KITCHN. Shout out to one of the founders. It is an like up and coming automation platform for marketers that is just so capable of handling so many scenarios in marketing that prior to being a user of Kitchen, I really felt like, oh, I need someone who's like 40% an engineer on my marketing team just to get these like little projects done, up and running and automated and like off of my plate. And giving Kitchen to my team felt like, okay, great. When we have success, when we actually have something that is working and we need to scale it without hiring just a random body to scale it up, Kitchen is able to solve that so often, which is exceptionally helpful in a lean startup environment where you're just trying to keep the team like tight and agile and moving forward. So Kitchen has helped me do things like turn one image into 300 ads across a bunch of different ad networks. It's also helped me with reporting automation for tools that hitherto had like no API access. It's helped me do things like moderate comments on social media, on social platforms that don't have a Hootsuite function or don't have an integration with any other sort of like true social tool. Basically, Kitchen has been able to integrate with APIs in a way that some people might be comfortable with if they're using like a Zapier or other sort of like low code, no code tools. But Kitchen is definitely that, but with marketers in mind and the marketing use cases in mind. And with Kitchen running on my team, I was able to basically turn my graphic designer into an ad manager because all she had to do is drag and drop her graphic designs into a Google Drive folder. And it's like, great, now they're ads. Now they're launched. Now they're done. They've followed all of the settings that you already built. The report will be ready in 2 hours. So definitely a big fan of Kochava. Mobile marketer, check them out.
Cool. That's interesting because Kitchen I hadn't heard of before, so I'm glad you brought that up. And I'm glad our listeners got to hear that. Kochava happens to be a partner of ours, so we have a partnership with them, and so I'm glad you brought them up as well. And a little shout out to the team over at Kochava.
Yeah, it reminds me, David, we were supposed to have them on the show. I know something came up, but we've got to get back in touch with them and get them on deconstructing data. So we'll have to make a little clip on this and tag them on it.
Yeah.
But thanks so much for sharing that, Taylor. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. I love answering truthfully. I love questions that other people maybe are a little nervous to answer.
Absolutely. And well, it makes for a better show and better content. But in closing, Taylor, would you like to tell listeners any more about yourself and also how they can reach you if they want to contact you after the show?
Yes. So this is me. You've met me now. I'm Taylor Gabor, and I do this, but not with a camera and microphone, pretty much every day with lots of startups. Right now, I'm working on a social gaming app for best friends and deepening friendships. Very soon, I can't disclose the project I will be working on, but the team is Feature, Phiture, kind of the crack marketing team over in Berlin very soon. I start in a couple weeks. And I go by Digital Gabor if you want to find me on the internet or watch other clips of me talking to other marketers about marketing things. But if you're in New York or Berlin, you're most likely to see me at a karaoke bar. So if you recognize the orange hair, just say hi and we'll do a duet.
Awesome. Well, good luck on your move to Germany. I hope everything goes well for you.
Thank you. I am very excited.
Sounds like a great opportunity. And speaking of opportunities, we're glad to have had this opportunity to speak with you today. So thank you so much for joining us.
Anytime. Thank you both. It was excellent.
Yes, thank you so much. And before we go, audience members, we invite you to get powered by BDEX so you can build authentic connections with your audience and drive unprecedented engagement. So just imagine harnessing the power of AI to craft your audiences. So we're all using AI, and it's just, we're seeing the explosion of it. We talk about it on deconstructing data all the time. So just imagine taking your first party customer data and expanding your list with AI. And that's what we would love to help you do. So let's bring you closer to your marketing goals. And we're eager to guide you on that. So simply visit bdex.com and click Talk to an Expert to get powered by bdex. And then also for anyone curious about deconstructing data, we have some audience analytics now. We would love to share those with you as we're exploring making this a sponsored event. And we're just an email away. And also, if you know anyone, and Taylor, if you maybe know anyone who might be another great guest on the show, let us know. Just simply email us at info@bdex.com and share your qualitative data with us so we can make it better for you. And I put the QR code on the screen for anyone watching. And you can scan that to head over to bdex.com and click the Talk to an Expert button so that we can guide you with your data. And we'd love to do so. But thanks again so much for joining us, Taylor.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your day. Stay cool in the heat wave wherever you are.
Yes.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.